The ringtone shattered the peaceful silence of the afternoon, a shrill, demanding sound that seemed to slice through the dust motes dancing in the sunbeams of Evelyn Caldwell's living room. At 74, Evelyn had learned to recognize the specific cadence of disaster, and lately, disaster always seemed to have the same caller ID. She wiped her hands on her floral apron, dusted with the flour of the scones she was baking for herself, and picked up the phone. "Mom, listen, I need you to handle Christmas dinner this year. It is going to be 18 people from Todd's side of the family, plus us, so 22 in total. You know how you love to cook." Jessica's voice didn't ask. It commanded. It was casual, breezy, the tone of a woman ordering a latte at a drive-thru. Not a daughter asking her elderly mother to orchestrate a banquet for a small army. Evelyn felt the world tilt slightly on its axis. She leaned against the cool granite of the counter, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. 74 years of life on this earth, 48 years of marriage to a good man now gone, and nearly a decade of widowhood had led her to this moment. 22 people. Jessica. 22 people, Evelyn asked, her voice trembling slightly, her grip on the phone tightening until her knuckles turned the color of old parchment. And why exactly is this falling on me? From the other end of the line came a sigh so heavy with impatience it sounded like a tire deflating. It was the sound of a spoiled child denied a toy. "Oh, Mom, honestly, because you have the time. Todd and I work all day. We are exhausted. Besides, Todd's house is open concept, but the kitchen is tiny. Your place is perfect. You have that massive dining room and the double oven. And let's be real, nobody roasts a turkey like you. It is a compliment, really." Evelyn closed her eyes, letting the darkness behind her lids swallow the kitchen. This was the same kitchen where she had pureed carrots for Jessica when she was an infant, where she had bandaged scraped knees, where she had waited up with hot cocoa when Jessica returned late from prom, and where she had stood alone, weeping silently into a dish towel, the day after her husband Henry's funeral. It was a sacred space of service and love, but as she listened to her daughter, she felt a cold realization seeping into her bones. To Jessica, this wasn't a home, it was a venue, and Evelyn wasn't a mother. She was staff. "Jess, honey, I am 74 years old. I am not a caterer. I am your mother. Please, Mom, stop being dramatic. It is just a family dinner, not a coronation. You buy everything, keep the receipts, and I will pay you back after the holidays." Todd already spoke to his mother, Linda, and she is bringing the napkins and the ice. You just need to handle the proteins, the sides, the appetizers, the drinks, and make sure the house is spotless before noon. You know, the usual drill. The usual drill. Evelyn felt a bitter, acidic laugh bubbling up in her throat, burning like bile. When had the extraordinary burden of servitude become the usual drill? When had she signed a contract agreeing that her time, her arthritis, her limited energy, and her dignity were currencies to be spent freely by everyone else? And Mom. "One more thing," Jessica added, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper as if sharing a secret. "Todd's family has gone very particular this year. His sister is strictly gluten-free. Cousin Mike is doing keto, so no carbs for him. And Linda, well, you know Linda. She says she is allergic to garlic now, which I think is a lie, but we have to respect it. Oh, and we need red wine, a Cabernet, but nothing too cheap because Todd's boss might stop by and we need to impress him. But don't go crazy on the price because we are on a budget." Evelyn remained silent, letting the avalanche of demands crash over her. Each restriction was a stone, added to the backpack she was expected to carry up a mountain. It wasn't just the dinner. It was a lifetime of small erasures. It was the way they spoke over her at gatherings. It was the way they used her driveway as airport parking without asking. It was the way they assumed she had no inner life, no desires, no pulse other than the one that beat to serve them. And what will you be doing, Jessica, while I am peeling 50 pounds of potatoes and scrubbing toilets for your husband's relatives? Oh, Mom, I will be there to supervise, obviously. I'll help set the table and pour the wine. Todd will be busy entertaining his family. You know how much attention they need. It is important for his image. Something inside Evelyn's chest snapped. It wasn't a loud crack. It was the quiet structural failure of a bridge that had borne too much weight for too long. It was her patience. It was her infinite capacity to say yes. It was the desperate need to be the perfect, accommodating mother who never caused a ripple. For 74 years, she had been the woman who fixed things, who smoothed over rough edges, who smiled even when her world was collapsing. Jessica, I have a question for you. When was the last time Todd and his family invited me to something? When was the last time they treated me like the grandmother of their future children, and not as an unpaid domestic worker? Mom, don't start this. They love you. It is just... Well, you know how Todd is. He is shy. Shy. Todd, who had loudly demanded Evelyn change her cable package so he could watch sports when he visited. Todd, who had never hesitated to borrow money for a boat he didn't use. Todd, who treated her home like a free Airbnb. All right, Jessica. I understand perfectly. Evelyn's voice had changed. The tremor was gone. The softness, the pliability that had defined her maternal tone for decades had evaporated. In its place was something cold, smooth and hard like polished steel. Jessica seemed to sense the shift because her tone instantly morphed from demanding to manipulative sweetness. That means yes? Oh, Mom, you are the best. I promise it is going to be a beautiful Christmas. Everyone will remember how amazing you are. Evelyn looked out her kitchen window at the winter garden. The rose bushes were dormant, wrapping in burlap, waiting for spring. The old swing set, rusting in the corner, looked like the skeleton of a prehistoric beast. Her world had shrunk until it fit inside this house, inside the expectations of others. Jessica, my love, I have news for you. Your husband and his relatives are coming for Christmas. Perfect. Then I am going on a trip. You can take care of everyone because I am not a babysitter, and I am certainly not an employee. The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. It was deafening. Evelyn could almost hear the gears in Jessica's mind grinding to a halt, the panic rising like floodwater. She imagined Jessica's face, pale and horrified, eyes wide at the prospect of actually having to do the work she so casually assigned to others. What? Mom, you can't be serious. A trip. Where? With whom? Mom, this is ridiculous. Everything is already planned. Planned by you, Jessica, without asking me if I wanted to be part of the plan. Evelyn hung up the phone. Her hand was trembling, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of liberation. She stared at the receiver as if it were a smoking gun. For the first time in decades, she had said no. She had drawn a line in the sand, and the feeling was terrifying, dizzying, and utterly magnificent. She walked slowly into her living room, where the ghosts of her past watched her from silver frames on the mantelpiece. There was Jessica at 5, missing her front teeth, holding a pinwheel. There was Henry, handsome in his flannel shirt, holding a wrench, laughing at something she had said. There were photos of Christmases past, tables laden with food she had cooked, faces smiling, oblivious to the woman behind the camera who had been up since 4 a.m. basting a turkey. When had it begun? When had she stopped being Evelyn, the woman who loved jazz records and watercolor painting, and become simply Mom or Grandma? She remembered the day Henry died 10 years ago. Jessica was 24 then. Evelyn had promised herself she would be strong for her daughter, that she would fill the void Henry left. She had worked extra shifts at the library. She had cashed in bonds to pay for Jessica's wedding. She had swallowed her own grief to be a pillar of stability. But pillars are made of stone. They don't feel. They just support. Evelyn walked to her bedroom and opened the bottom drawer of her cedar chest. Underneath the winter quilts lay a red leather notebook. She took it out and sat on the edge of her bed. This was her ledger. For 5 years, ever since Jessica married Todd, Evelyn had written down every expense she had incurred for them, not out of malice, but out of the habit of a woman who had lived through lean times and respected the value of $1. She opened the book. The numbers were stark black ink on white paper. Todd's car repair, $800. Jessica's emergency credit card bill, $2,000. The vacation to Cabo they couldn't afford but took anyway, $1,500. The grocery bills, the utility spikes when they stayed over. The total at the bottom of the last page was staggering. Over $25,000. $25,000 taken from her retirement, from the nest egg Henry had worked himself into an early grave to provide for her. And never once, not once, had they asked if she had enough, if she could afford her blood pressure medication, if she needed help fixing the gutter that leaked every time it rained. She closed the book and felt a tear slide down her cheek. It wasn't sadness, it was rage, hot, cleansing rage. Rage at Jessica for being so blind, rage at Todd for his entitlement. But mostly, rage at herself for teaching them that she was a renewable resource that would never run dry. The phone rang again. She knew it was Jessica. She let it ring. Then the landline rang. Then her cell phone pinged with texts. "Mom, pick up. This isn't funny. Mom, Todd is freaking out. You can't do this. We already told Linda you were cooking." Evelyn turned both phones off. She walked to her closet and pulled out a suitcase. It was dusty. She hadn't used it since her honeymoon with Henry to Niagara Falls, 48 years ago. She wiped it down with a tenderness that surprised her. Tomorrow, she thought. Tomorrow, I go to the travel agency. The night was long, filled with the creaks and groans of the old house. Evelyn lay awake staring at the ceiling fan shadows dancing in the moonlight. At 3 a.m., she got up and made herbal tea. She sat at her kitchen table, the scene of so many crimes of servitude, and allowed herself to remember the insults she had buried. She remembered the baby shower 3 years ago. Jessica had arrived late, stressed, and when a guest complimented Evelyn's dress, Jessica had laughed and said, "Oh, Mom loves her vintage looks. She's excessively frugal." Frugal. As if Evelyn hadn't just written a check for the catering of that very party. She remembered the first time Todd ate at her table. She had made a pot roast that had taken 6 hours. Todd had eaten 3 servings, wiped his mouth with his sleeve, and said, "It's okay, but my mom uses more salt." And Jessica had laughed. Her own daughter had laughed. She remembered the time she broke her wrist slipping on the ice on their driveway because Todd hadn't shoveled it. They dropped her at the ER entrance and went to find parking. They came back with coffees for themselves, having forgotten to ask if she wanted water. The tea grew cold. The dawn light began to bleed gray into the black sky. Evelyn stood up. She felt light, untethered. At 9 a.m. sharp, she pushed open the glass door of Horizons Travel. It was a small shop tucked between a bakery and a dry cleaner, smelling faintly of paper and dreams. A young man with bright blue glasses looked up from his computer. "Good morning, ma'am. Can I help you plan a getaway?" "I want to go away for Christmas," Evelyn said, her voice steady. "Far away. Somewhere they cannot find me. Somewhere with art and wine and history." The agent, whose name tag read Leo, smiled. He didn't look at her with pity. He looked at her with interest. "I have just the thing. A solo traveler group tour, the Grand European. Paris, Florence, Rome, 3 weeks, 5-star hotels, private museum tours. It departs December 20th and returns January 10th. Evelyn looked at the brochure. The Colosseum bathed in golden light. The Seine at twilight. She had read about these places in books for 50 years. She'd watched documentaries. She had dreamed of them while scrubbing roasting pans. "How much?" she asked. "It is premium," Leo warned gently. $7,000, all inclusive. Evelyn thought of the red ledger. She thought of the $25,000 she had bled for people who wouldn't cross the street to help her. "Book it," she said. As she signed the papers, her hand didn't shake. She handed over her credit card, the one with the high limit she saved for emergencies. This was an emergency. This was a rescue mission for her own soul. When she walked out of the agency, the winter air felt crisp and clean. She turned her phone back on. The barrage of notifications was instant. Voicemails from Jessica, texts from Todd, even a message from Linda. "Evelyn, heard you're having an episode. Let's talk." Linda. Evelyn typed a single group message to Jessica and Todd. "I am not having an episode. I am having a vacation. I will be in Europe for Christmas. The kitchen is yours if you want to use it, but I won't be in it." She hit send and walked into the boutique clothing store next door. She bought a camel hair coat that cost more than her monthly grocery budget. She bought leather boots. She bought silk scarves in vibrant teals and magentas. She looked in the mirror of the dressing room and saw a stranger staring back, a woman with secrets, a woman with a life. The next 3 days were a blur of preparation. She kept the doors locked and the curtains drawn. She saw Todd's car slow down in front of the house twice, but he didn't dare come to the door. They were afraid of her now. Good. On the morning of December 20th, a town car arrived to take her to the airport. As she locked the front door, she left a key under the mat just in case they needed to water the plants. But she left a note on the kitchen counter right next to the red ledger. "For your records. Happy holidays." The flight was terrifying and exhilarating. She drank champagne in business class. She watched 3 movies. When she landed in Paris, the city was gray and rainy, and it was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. The tour group was small, mostly widows and divorcees, all looking for something they had lost. But there was one man, Arthur Sterling. He was 76, a retired architect from Boston with silver hair and eyes that crinkled at the corners. He wore tweed jackets and carried a sketchbook everywhere. On the second night, in a bistro in Montmartre, Arthur sat next to her. "Do you mind if I join you, Evelyn? You look like you are contemplating the mysteries of the universe, or perhaps just the onion soup." Evelyn laughed. It was a rusty sound, unused, but it felt good. "Just the soup, Arthur, and the fact that I am eating it here and not basting a turkey in Illinois." Arthur nodded, pouring her a glass of Bordeaux. "Running away from home?" "Running toward myself," she corrected. They spent the next 2 weeks inseparable, not in a romantic rush, but in the comfortable, steady rhythm of 2 people who have nothing left to prove. They walked through the Louvre, Arthur explaining the structural marvels of the ceiling, while Evelyn marveled at the brushstrokes of the masters. They ate gelato on the steps of the Duomo in Florence, shivering in the cold, but refusing to go inside. One night in Rome, overlooking the lights of the Eternal City, Arthur asked her, "Why did you wait so long?" "Because I thought I was essential," Evelyn whispered. "I thought if I stopped pedaling, the bicycle of my family would fall over. And did it? I don't know. And for the first time, I don't care." Back home, the bicycle had indeed fallen over, and it had caught fire. Jessica's text had shifted from anger to panic to a strange, defeated silence. "Mom." The turkey didn't thaw in time. "Mom, Linda hates the store-bought pie. Mom, Todd and I had a huge fight. Mom, I saw the notebook. That last message had come 3 days ago." Evelyn hadn't replied. She was too busy tossing a coin into the Trevi fountain, wishing not for a return to Rome, but for the strength to maintain her boundaries when she returned to reality. On January 10th, Evelyn unlocked her front door. The house smelled musty and cold. There were no lights on. She dragged her suitcase inside, her new camel coat looking out of place in the familiar hallway. She walked into the kitchen. It was relatively clean, though there was a stain on the rug and a chipped plate in the sink. The red ledger was gone from the counter. She made herself a cup of coffee, real coffee, strong and black, the way she had learned to drink it in Italy. She sat at the table. Half an hour later, the doorbell rang. It wasn't a demanding ring. It was hesitant. Evelyn opened the door to find Jessica standing there. Her daughter looked tired. Her hair was messy, her eyes puffy. She held the red notebook in her hands like it was a holy relic or a live grenade. "Can I come in?" Jessica asked, her voice small. Evelyn stepped aside. They sat in the living room. Jessica placed the notebook on the coffee table between them. "I read it," Jessica said. "All of it." "Good. I didn't know, Mom. I knew we borrowed money, but I didn't realize it was that much. I didn't realize we were bleeding you dry. You didn't realize because you didn't want to look," Evelyn said calmly. "It was easier to see me as a resource than as a person." Jessica started to cry. It wasn't the manipulative tantrum of before. It was the heavy, ugly crying of shame. Christmas was a disaster. Linda walked out. Todd got drunk and embarrassed everyone. I tried to cook and I burned my hand and nobody asked if I was okay. They just asked when the food would be ready. Evelyn nodded slowly. And how did that feel? Lonely. It felt incredibly lonely. "Welcome to my life for the past 30 years, Evelyn said. Jessica looked up, mascara running down her cheeks. "I am so sorry, Mom. I am so, so sorry. I don't know how to fix this." "You don't fix it, Jessica. You change it." Evelyn reached into her purse and pulled out a photo. It was a selfie of her and Arthur taken in front of the Coliseum. They were both laughing, windblown and happy. "This is Arthur," Evelyn said. "He is coming to visit next month. We are going to take a painting class together in the city." Jessica looked at the photo, then at her mother. "You look younger. I feel younger, because I put down the weight I was carrying." Jessica took a deep breath. Todd is furious you showed me the numbers. He says you are being petty, and that is why Todd is no longer invited to dinner at this house until he apologizes," Evelyn said, her voice hard as diamond. "And if he doesn't like it, he can eat at his mother's house." "But Mom—" "No buts, Jessica, those are the terms. I am done being the servant. I am done being the bank. If you want a mother, I am here. I will love you, I will listen to you, and I will support you emotionally, but I am not your staff." Jessica nodded slowly. Absorbing the new reality, the power dynamic had shifted irrevocably. The woman sitting across from her wasn't the doormat she had known. She was a matriarch. "So tell me," Evelyn said, leaning back and crossing her legs, smoothing her Italian wool trousers. "How was the store-bought pie?" Jessica let out a wet, choked laugh. "It was terrible. The crust tasted like cardboard." Evelyn smiled. "Well, next year, if you ask nicely, and only if, I am in town, I might teach you how to make one. But you will be the one peeling the apples." 6 months later, Evelyn sat in her garden. The roses were in full bloom, a riot of crimson and pink. Arthur was setting up 2 easels on the grass. Inside the house, she could hear Jessica laughing. She was in the kitchen, making lunch for them. Todd wasn't there. He was still sulking, refusing to apologize, and Evelyn found she didn't miss him at all. She picked up a paintbrush and dipped it into the cerulean blue. She looked at the canvas, blank and waiting. For the first time in her life, she wasn't painting by numbers. She wasn't coloring inside the lines someone else had drawn for her. She was creating her own masterpiece. She looked at Arthur, who winked at her. She looked at the open window where her daughter was finally learning to be an adult. And Evelyn realized that the greatest tragedy wasn't that she had lost herself for 30 years. The tragedy would have been if she hadn't found the courage to go looking. She touched the brush to the canvas. A stroke of blue, bold and unapologetic. The color of the sky over Rome, the color of freedom. The season of servitude was over. The season of Evelyn had just begun.